Good evening and welcome. I am Terry Kay of the Jewish Grandparents Network. Tonight, we are thrilled that our friends from Orot, Center for New Jewish Learning, will explore with us how feeling thankful can build stronger family connections. Thank you so much for joining us. You'll notice that all of you are on mute. Still, we would love to have your questions, so feel free to write them in the chat box or raise your Zoom hands, and we want to take questions throughout. May I just start by saying many thanks to our wonderful colleague Zoe Fleischer of Tiny Windows Consulting, who will help us facilitate tonight. And before I introduce our two speakers, or our facilitators, I want to actually say a special hello and introduce my dear colleague, JGN co-founder and executive director, David Raphael. Just a heads up that we will need to hop off at 7:55 p.m. sharp because Rebecca and Jane both have classes to teach at 8 o'clock. So we will say goodbye sharp then. Now may I introduce our expert and wonderful presenters. Rebecca Minkus-Lieberman is a co-founder of Orot, Center for New Jewish Learning, and serves as its executive director. Rebecca is a lifelong Jewish educator with degrees from Princeton University, the University of Chicago, and DePaul University. Rebecca says she believes in the power of Jewish wisdom to nourish and transform lives from the inside out. Dr. Jane Shapiro is a co-founder of Orot with Rebecca. She has degrees from Princeton University and the Jewish Theological Seminary. And in 2017, Jane received a Covenant Foundation Award, Educators Award. Jane tells us that her Eli, is that how you say it, Eli? Jane?
Yes. Yes.
Eli talk, I wasn't sure if it was Eli or Eli talk on the Torah of babyhood seems to make people cry. Jane is also a beloved member of JGN's National Advisory Council, and she is the proud mother of 4 sons and Bubby to 5 boys. Over to you both, Rebecca and Jane. Thank you so much for facilitating tonight.
Thank you so much, Terry. It's an honor for us to be here and to be able to speak and facilitate hopefully a rich conversation and share some both texts and concrete techniques and tools that we hope will enable you to bring these things into your daily lives as grandparents in your family networks as we move into the holiday of Thanksgiving. So to start, we wanted to share a practice, something that is a big part of what we do at Orot. At Orot, we open up Jewish wisdom to bring it into people's lives in very personal, relevant, and transformative ways. And we do that by using all different sorts of modalities and tools. And one of the modalities that we use is mindfulness meditation, offered in a Jewish framework. And so we wanted to begin by offering a short meditation that everybody can join in on and participate with. Whether you have any experience at all with mindfulness meditation, makes no difference. This is very easy and accessible. And really what it is really just an opportunity for us all to center ourselves and begin together from a place of open-hearted awareness and attention to the ideas and the questions that we are going to try to open up together this evening. So I want to invite you, wherever you happen to be sitting, if you're in a chair, on a couch, in a bed, wherever you happen to be, to just notice your body for a moment, how it feels sitting wherever you happen to be sitting, and see if you can bring yourself into a posture, a position that feels centered and balanced, whatever that physically feels like for your body. Maybe it's anchoring your hips into the chair beneath you. Maybe it's resting the soles of your feet in a balanced way on the ground. And I want to invite you, all of this is invitation only, so feel free to take what you would like. Invite you to gently close your eyes. And I'm going to offer just a few minutes of a guided, visualized meditation that will help us move into our conversation this evening. As you rest your body in a comfortable position, begin to just pay attention to how your body feels. Maybe resting your hands in a comfortable position on your laps, with your eyes gently closed. We close our eyes because it gives us an opportunity to bring our attention rather from the external things that we see with our eyes. When our eyes are open, we bring our sight inwards, and we bring into action something that the Hasidic tradition calls ayin shlishit. In Hebrew means your third eye. We have two eyes that we use to see things, how they appear on the surface. But when we want to see things in a deeper way and pay attention and notice in a deeper way, we can often close our eyes, and that gives us an opportunity to tune in to that inner way of seeing that is often deeper and many times more complete and more true. So as you let yourself sit in just a quiet, still place for a moment, let your breath slow down. Our breath is a tool that is always available to us. As long as we are living, our breath is an access point to come to a place of quiet, to let our minds settle down. And sometimes I like to think of an image of a snow globe, which I used to collect when I was a little girl. And if you think of a snow globe, it often has a scene in the middle. And then there are tiny pieces of sparkly snow or confetti. And when you shake up the snow globe, all the pieces scatter around. And those pieces of snow obscure the scene in the middle. And when we sit in quiet and stillness for a few moments, what we are really doing is taking that snow globe and setting it down on the table, letting it rest and letting all of those pieces of snow slowly float to the bottom and settle. And when we sit in quiet, we give our minds an opportunity to settle in the same way. And what can then be available is a clearer view of the scene at the center. Suddenly we can see things more clearly. So as we sit, I want to introduce an important concept in Judaism. It's called hakarat hatov. And it literally means noticing the good. How do we notice the good around us? How can employing that daily practice of hakarat hatov help us see things differently, perceive them from a new angle? How does hakarat hatov help us flip the script sometimes on situations in our lives, in our families? So I want to invite you to take one of your hands and place it over your heart. Because this work of cultivating thankfulness is really not the work of our minds, of our cognitive intellectual selves. It is the work of the heart. It involves softening and opening our heart and noticing the good that is all around us. As you take a deep breath in and you feel your chest expand with that inhale, then exhale and let go, letting go of negativity, stress, tension. using our breath to make a conscious choice of what we're bringing into our hearts. We can choose to breathe in positivity, optimism, compassion, generosity, love. We can actively breathe those things in to our bodies. And we can also choose what we want to let go of with our exhale. Letting go of blame, of expectation, of anger, resentment. So in an embodied way, we can use our hand and our heart as a way to center us and anchor us in to this practice of hakarat hatov, of taking in what it is we want to pay attention to and nourish, and releasing those things that are not serving ourselves, our relationships, the family dynamics that we want to nurture. Using our breath and using our hand on heart. We notice the good in ourselves. We notice the good in our children. We notice the good in our grandchildren, in our communities, and in the larger world around us.
Amen.
Feel your heart beating beneath your hand and know that you have the possibility and the power to nourish your heart with what you choose. I want to invite you to take 2 deep lung-filling inhales and exhales that are full. And don't be afraid to be vocal with your exhale or inhale. Really letting go of what you want to let go of today. And with that last exhale, I invite you to open your eyes and join us again. And I will pass it off to my colleague, Jane.
Good evening, everyone. So pleased to be here. It just feels like what a wonderful way to move into the Thanksgiving season. I love that meditation. I love how my body feels now, just having had a chance to begin that way together with all of you. And I want to just start by noting that we often think of gratitude as some outside idea that is kind of distant and remote. And what Rebecca just led us to feel is that the expression of gratitude is a dynamic process that we can initiate and that we have control over. We can begin to be engines, if you will, of gratitude and making that happen. But I also think at the same time that we all together are maybe thinking about something I could let go of and do hakarat hatov, that there are also obstacles, that it's not a smooth, easy thing to do all of the time. And so I want to invite all of you to think about, and here we're going to use the chat room for this, is to think about the flip side of it, because the more that we can develop practices to make this gratitude dynamic, but also be aware of things that might become obstacles to that. So think for a minute now about what might get in the way of noticing the good. What kinds of things might keep you in your life from attuning to the goodness around you, in your family dynamics, as you anticipate being together with family? What might make it hard to attune to the good? So there's my question. I'm going to just ask you to think about that and then begin to put your responses in the chat. not being in the moment. Yes. Illness, financial worries. There are many conditions in life that make it really hard to notice the good. Chronic pain. Yes. Worrying about eating too much. Vanity. These are all, I want to sense how incredibly powerful all of these responses are. Someone knows how to push your buttons. Yes. Awful politics. Yes. Distance. Yes. FOMO. Others are laughing and talking, and I'm not sure I'm part of that. Yes. Maybe you want to choose one to speak to. Yes, perhaps. I want to think about the idea of worrying about too many things, chronic pain, that each of these, as they come into the chat box, I think you can feel the strength and power and how really these obstacles can really like stop us from moving forward into this kind of calming hakarata, noticing it in some way, not knowing how to see the good. And I think that it asks us to somehow first recognize the obstacle when we're facing an obstacle and saying, like, I know this is something that's going to get in the way of me being able to be in this mode. But in the moment of recognition, awful politics, pain, it can be a physical sensation. Sometimes by naming it allows us also to kind of step back and say, these are the things that are obstacles for me. And just by giving them names, and just by recognizing them, it can also, I think, in some ways help the obstacle itself to just move back a little bit and go, obstacles are things that I can walk around, all right? And just saying like, oh, there's my obstacle. There is the experience, not knowing how to name the good in our lives. Not even, I like what Susie said, like not even having language for recognizing the good. Just being able to just stop and go, I feel the obstacle. I see it before me. Okay, that I see it before me. I know what my obstacle is. I can recognize like that's the thing that can get in my way. Those are all things that give us a perspective and a way. And when we recognize it, then our heart also says, this is something that touches your heart also, and not in a positive way. And so all of those things, I think, are information for us to be able to say, this obstacle could stop me from feeling the peace, the love. What I'm really striving for is how I want my heart to feel. And just being, and it might not solve the problem of what makes something an obstacle. And I think I want to give everybody permission to say, just name it as an obstacle. It doesn't have to get solved or answered. You don't have to combat the obstacle. Just say there's an obstacle, and being able to kind of move around it and put it to the side in the sense of like, I can choose to move back to that place I felt before of recognizing hakarata tov. It may also be that in walking past an obstacle, moving around, that our perspective will change, how we feel about our own ability to say, that obstacle isn't stopping me. And that obstacle now is behind me because I've walked around it and I can move forward. And it feels to me that those kinds of thoughts or ideas or feelings can get us back on a path. I mean, there's so much in Judaism that talks about the path we walk, the way we traverse, that being able to return to a path, recognizing the obstacle, but recognizing we've moved beyond it in some way. It's still an obstacle, but we've moved beyond it, I think is an extremely powerful idea. So I love all these contributions. I love these. It's
Jane, can I add one thing?
Please.
That I'm thinking about as I'm looking at these beautiful comments.
Yeah.
I want to just say that I think, especially the comment that not knowing how to name the good in our lives is very it's a very important question to navigate, because I think sometimes we are by nature intellectual cognitive beings, and we like to try to kind of figure out and name and explain and rationally kind of package things up. And I think one of the gifts of the mindfulness tradition is that it offers us tools to get, and that's what I was trying to do in the meditation, to get into our bodies and how we feel, and less in, out of our mind, out of trying to kind of rationally package things up. And what I would say in response to that question of not knowing how to name the good in our lives, sometimes we can figure out where those good places are in our lives by feeling what they make, sensing what they make us feel, by noticing those things around us that fill us up, that give us light, that make us feel joyful. And those are things that we can, and again, if we are feeling and we're sensing that, right, in an embodied way in our hearts, then those are things we can turn towards. And that is the Hakarat Tov. We don't always have to name it and package it up and categorize it, right? We can just kind of turn towards the things in our lives that feel good and blessed and holy. And that is something that is very Jewish, right? When we'll talk about this towards the end, but the blessings that animate all of the Jewish tradition, that is part of what we do as Jews. We notice and we bless. And so this idea of noticing and how it makes you feel, and I exactly what Jane said, that we don't, if there are obstacles out there, we don't have to fix every obstacle, right? We can choose the obstacles that we want to notice and say, that is really hard. And I'm going to turn and move around that obstacle and focus on something else. So I think one of our powers as humans is to choose the directions we take, to choose the mindsets we bring. And so I just wanted to kind of respond to that. And so what we're going to do now is we would like to share a couple of texts with you, and share the text out loud and invite conversation, invite your responses in the chat, and also for you to use the raise hand feature if you know how to do that on the bottom, where under reactions, if you want to actually speak and share reflections, we would love that. We want this to be participatory and not just us, speaking at you. So I'm going to share my screen, and this first text that Jane will walk us through is exactly about this idea of blessing.
Beautiful. So what I want to invite you to do as I read this is you might want to put your hand back on your heart and just see how your body feels, because you might get to a phrase where you're kind of like, I really like that image. I really like that phrase. So let your body guide you and see where the richness comes through from the words of our tradition.
Wait a minute. One sec. Sorry.
Okay. No worries.
Skipped the wrong. Okay. Whoops.
Just an obstacle.
Hold on. Okay. There we go.
Good. All right. So hands on the heart, or just tune in and see if where the goodness comes out of this text. One who delights in this world without the blessing of thanks is like a robber, because the blessing is what causes the shefa, the abundant flow of God's love and goodness, to pour into our world. This is an idea that we find in the Talmud, but this idea of giving a blessing is a significant thing in terms of life. It causes the abundant flow of God's love. Excuse me. Like a hand on the faucet, each blessing of gratitude turns on the tap. Each thought of thankfulness cycles more divine abundance into your world. Thus, your life is enriched. The cycles of individual or community life, the seasons, etc., need to be nourished by our appreciation. By the blessing of gratitude, we release the sparks in the food back into the life-sustaining flow of holiness. The blessing completes our energy exchange with God. We become partners with the divine in a sacred cycle of giving and receiving, in which we are not only on the take, By gratitude, we raise the trapped sparks, so we become givers, and the nurturing flow is sustained. Sorry for the coughing. So I want to invite you to just, is there a phrase in this that really just speaks to you, that just gives you a window into how to unlock the goodness? And perhaps put those in the chat. So we become givers, releasing trapped sparks. Yes. That is not the kind of language we think about normally when we think about gratitude, thinking releasing sparks. Again, it's so dynamic, coming right out of the Jewish mystical tradition. I hope that in looking at this, that everyone feels the encouragement that feeling grateful is in some, what we said before, as some passive exchange, or just noticing things, that this text is inviting us into an incredibly dynamic relationship with goodness, and a dynamic relationship with blessing is like moving through the world, feeling like these moments that I notice the good, that I see something in my children or my grandchildren or being with my family, is releasing something so much bigger than just my own experiences. Yeah, partners with the divine. Fantastic. We complete an energy exchange. And I love that. I love this text, and I love all the images, because I just feel that there's so much potential in accepting and moving into this idea of blessing and connection and gratitude. I say the Modeh Ani every morning. Thank you, Randy. Yeah. Every night after I recite the Shema. I can't see the whole chat.
In Judaism, there is a beautiful tradition of trying to offer 100 blessings a day, which is, that's a high bar, right? To say 100 blessings. But just even using that framework as we enter into the day, and thank you for mentioning the Modeh Ani. We began with the song of the Modeh Ani, and that is a concrete practice to enter into each day. That each morning when we wake up, we begin with that blessing. Even before you get out of bed, when you're lying in bed, you begin with the Modeh Ani. It could be the Modeh Ani that is in the prayer book, the traditional. You could write your own Modeh Ani. It doesn't matter. It's the idea of cultivating a regular practice, a daily practice every morning that moves you into this way of being in the world, right? Because when you begin your day with the Modeh Ani, you are starting your day by kind of tapping in to this flow, this faucet of gratitude, of thankfulness. And it really can set the tone for the entire day. And this is not just the Jewish tradition. The Jewish tradition is in line with the science. There's so much science that supports a daily gratitude practice and how that can have a profound effect on orienting you towards this way of looking at the world. Anything else on this text, Jane, or should we go on to the next one?
Oh, we go on to the next one. Fine.
Okay.
Next
Great.
one's so beautiful.
So the next text here is by one of our favorite teachers, Parker Palmer, not a Jewish teacher. He's actually a Quaker. And here he's actually in conversation with Rabbi Marsha Prager, talking about the idea of shefa, of abundance. What is abundance? What does it mean to adopt a kind of a mindset of abundance? So what does he say here? Abundance does not happen automatically. It is created when we have the sense to choose community, to come together, to celebrate, and to share our common store. Authentic abundance does not lie in secured stockpiles of food or cash or influence or affection, right? In those external things. That's not what abundance is. It's not about having lots of things. It is about belonging to a community where we can give those goods to others who need them and receive them from others when we are in need. So again, this is so in line with what Rabbi Marsha Prager was writing about, because Parker Palmer is saying that this sense of abundance, of living a life with this abundance mindset, is about trusting that you can give and receive and give and receive in this kind of flow, this exchange. And he says, abundance comes as I break free of scarcity thinking and remind myself again and again that what we need is here. Right? And here is a tool that I use often. I think when we get into moments, when we are come up against those obstacles, if we're talking about our family dynamics, I am a mother of 3 children. I have a mother, I have a mother-in-law, right? There's a larger family dynamic of which I am a part. And I think there are moments where I, as I'm sure many of us, have moments of difficulty, of conflict, of things when things don't kind of play out the way I imagine they will in our family dynamic. And there's an opportunity in all of these moments to consider, what is the mindset I'm going to bring into this moment of encountering an obstacle? Am I going to have this scarcity mindset of thinking that, well, this is wrong and that person's wrong and that person, disappointed me and that person betrayed me and that person is not behaving the way I want, right? That is the scarcity mindset of noticing what is not going right. Or, right, can we flip, kind of put on the new glasses, change our outlook, and think about any situation from an abundance mindset, rather than looking at what is wrong and what is not going well? Can I can I turn myself towards an abundance mindset by looking at what is good, hakarat hatov, what is operating in my life and my family that is really beautiful and really abundant and full of blessing, right? That's the choice we have. And Parker Palmer says, and this is a line that's borrowed from a poem that ends with, what we need is here, to use that saying as kind of an anchoring phrase when you're facing obstacles. They say, what I need is here. What I have is enough. This is beautiful as it is. I don't need to focus on what's missing, on what I need to fix, on what's hard. I can choose to focus on the goodness that is right here. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. One sec. Let's see. Because I want to see people's faces.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, and great, now I can see some of the chats. I couldn't see it while I was sharing the screen.
Yeah.
I want to see if anyone has, as we're talking about this idea of abundance mindset and scarcity mindset, Jane and I wanted to ask you to think about your own grandparents, your own parents and grandparents, looking backwards first. And think about if there are certain memories that come to mind, certain recollections that you have of your own grandparents and your own parents, moments when they embraced an abundant mindset, when they maybe were operating from a place of scarcity, difficult times, not having what they needed, periods of struggle, but when they they flipped to an abundant path and they chose to change the script. Jane, would you add anything to that?
No, I'm definitely in sync that I've heard so many stories of people saying, my grandmother didn't have much, but she made good, or, we didn't, and it's such a repeating motif in many of the conversations that I have with grandparents, that we just sort of take the story in and don't stop and appreciate the story for the treasure that it is. That we have around us living, not living anymore, but stories that are still alive of people who lived this way, who had this sense of abundance. So I'd love if a couple people wanted to share a story or two, or if
Yeah.
something.
We would love to hear your voice. I mean, the chat is great, but if you're willing to speak.
David's hand is up.
Oh, David, great.
So, many of us, my father was a Depression era child. And there were times when he would, I remember him so clearly screaming at me for not squeezing the toothpaste from the bottom of the tube. Or one time I dropped a dime under a soda machine and he screamed at me to get the custodian to move the soda machine so I can get the dime. But having said that, there were moments when he recognized the need to give openly and freely. And the one that comes to mind, right away was that when I was in college, there are three of us who were close friends, me, Richard, and Bobby. And Richard and Bobby were going to travel cross country. And I was going to work at my father's factory. And Bobby was killed in an auto accident. And my dad said to me, "You go out, I'm flying you out to be with Richard for the summer. That's where you need to be, not at work."
Yeah.
And so there were these, in the context of, this Depression era mindset of limited resources, there were these extraordinary moments where he recognized to give openly.
Wow.
And it wasn't always about money.
Wow. Wow.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Somebody have another story they want to share? It's so nice to hear people's voices and not just the chat box.
No pressure, but I do see Randy, you posted in the chat if you'd like to either have your voice or your video. It'd be lovely to hear from you.
So I'm Randy, and we struggled a lot financially growing up. And just a very quick short story. My parents owed money. They and on Yom Kippur, somebody came knocking at the door asking for money. And it devastated my mother because it was Yom Kippur and she was trying to get everything, the house in order. And the person who came asking for the money wasn't Jewish and had no idea. And she just felt really devastated by that. But, we were a very, very close family. And I always felt loved. And I never really felt like we didn't, as a teenager, when I went to, I grew up in a very wealthy community. And when I went to school, everybody would have these great sweaters or skirts, and my mother sewed my clothes. But all in all, I felt a tremendous amount of love. And I guess the only thing I could say is that when I went to college and people would go, "You're from so-and-so," which was a very wealthy community. It's like, you don't act like you're from that community, because we didn't act privileged. We just were who we were. So when people would meet me, I just presented myself as who I was. And so money and clothing and cars and things like that didn't get in the way because we didn't have it.
So, Randy, these are beautiful examples of, and David also, that recognizing scarcity, but also recognizing that there is something more, being who you are as a person, just not being a pretentious person, or knowing when you have to send somebody to be with somebody else. Those are moments that are really teaching us what is really abundance. It's a prioritizing of the things that matter most in life and not the things that might be obstacles. All right, that can catch us up. It's like it gets us to a more essential place. Yeah.
Edward, feel free to share.
Edward, you want to share?
Yes.
Right.
Excuse me. So my dad died when I was 10 and a half. That's 64 years ago. And I never knew my father's parents. My maternal grandparents would come every Friday for Shabbat dinner. And they would travel by train. I grew up in the Bronx as the day, and they would bring 3-4 bags of groceries. And when they left, they would give my mother, money, say, "Evelyn, this is for you and our 4 grandchildren." My grandmother took me to family circle meetings, and took me to other things. And I have fond memories of my grandparents, and I think that the values of caring about us, because they really were the only ones who were there consistently. And they weren't rich people, but we were their grandchildren, and my mother was their daughter. And that, I've been a social worker now 50 years, and I speak about my grandparents a lot. My son will only know about memories of my father and grandparents, and my wife never met my grandparents, but what they stood for and the memories, and that you don't have to have a lot of money to have abundance. And I think that the way I look at life and the way I've helped people, what is important in life and what matters.
And this is what I want to say is the most amazing thing about the Jewish Grandparent Network is that we can access all of the ways that we can learn gratitude by doing mindfulness practice, by doing Hakarat Tov, drawing on Jewish teachings, or what our tradition teaches about these things, but then also drawing on our tradition, but also on our family stories. These family stories that people share have so much beauty and wisdom in it. It's such a powerful way to access, I'm going to say truth, to access truth through our family stories about all the topics we're talking about this evening. There are others we could be addressing, but abundance, goodness, gratitude, love, that together we're like, there's so many ways to get to those feelings if only we do it. But our family stories of our grandparents, our families are just as precious as Jewish traditional wisdom and ancient practices. Yeah.
And I just want to share, and Allison, we see your hand. I want to call on you in one sec. I just want to just piggyback on what Jane just said. And I think that, one of the wonderful things, and I know you all know this, but I'm thinking about my parents and the stories that they have told my children growing up. I lost my father about a year ago, but my children still have in their minds all of the stories that my parents told them when they were younger. Now my oldest one is off at college, but all of the stories of their parents and their grandparents. And so I think these stories, as Jane was saying, of making, choosing abundance in moments and experiences of scarcity are such beautiful gifts, legacies that grandparents can give to grandchildren. And believe me, they stay with them. My kids they can repeat those stories that they have heard, and that gives them a sense of continuity and a deep, powerful, source of strength for them as they think about their own lives.
I was just thinking, Rebecca, that Thanksgiving is such an opportunity for storytelling. It is just an opportunity, like everybody's together, like, let's tell some family stories, what family stories, I remember when we did this, and there's lots of resources on the Jewish Grandparent Network website of ways to use this time to collect some memories, which,
yeah,
it's abundance. We all have abundant stories. Yeah.
Allison? Oh, you have to unmute.
There should be a microphone or what looks like a microphone. I'll ask you to unmute and see if that helps.
No.
Otherwise, you can put it in the chat and we can read it out for you if that's easier.
There's Allison.
No. I'm sorry, we can't hear you, Allison. Okay. If you want to put it in the chat, that would be great. Okay, wonderful. Anyone else? Anything to share? Oh, yeah, Marlene. Great. You have to unmute, Marlene.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Okay. I wanted to share a story about my in-laws. Well, all right. When I was 28, I went to Israel to volunteer on a kibbutz. and also with the idea that I might make Aliyah. I wasn't sure about the Aliyah, but I knew I wanted the experience on the kibbutz. And I ended up on a kibbutz in the Upper Galilee. And on that kibbutz, I ended up meeting a wonderful young man who subsequently became my husband, and his parents and his immediate family. And one of the lessons that I learned by having the joy of getting to know my in-laws was unconditional love. Now, I had parents, in the States who were very loving, but it was a different kind of dynamics. My parents were much more into, you need to do this, achieve this, and get this degree and that degree. And my in-laws were, whatever you are. The lesson was, I never, in the time that I saw my in-laws when we were living with them on the kibbutz, I saw them every day. I never heard them say a negative remark to anyone or about anyone, ever.
So you're saying that you had a living example of abundance and goodness and love.
I had a living example, and I was blessed with it. It was like a light that from them just glowed on me, because they just glowed with this unconditional acceptance and love.
That's so beautiful.
And
So
it
Maria,
was
we want to capture that feeling that you're
and what happened, this was what was as time moves forward, my husband and I, we had our own children. And then, even though I, as a young, when I was growing up, never, unfortunately, had the opportunity to know, I only knew one grandparent, and I only knew him from across the country. So I didn't get to know
Marlene, I want to take your story
very well.
Rebecca,
Yes.
thank you for sharing that. We want to take your story and the glow on your face as you told that story, which is just underscoring the power of memory and story and experiencing someone who is a model for us of this kind of gratitude and hakarat hatov that we're talking about. I want to give everybody one more thing that they can do to activate these feelings and get that glow themselves. So Rebecca.
Yeah. So we mentioned before, having this daily practice of waking up in the morning and beginning the day with a modeh ani or modah ani, if in the feminine. And we have a beautiful version in our prayer book, but we can also write our own. And now that we have these memories of our parents and our grandparents and how they operated, maybe encountered scarcity, but flipped it into, abundance, abundant love, abundant generosity. We wanted to just share these prompts, and they can be hopefully put in the chat too, or maybe sent out later so that you can use them later on. But we want to offer these as a guideline, tools that you can use, prompts to create and author your own modah ani that you can offer in the morning. Really thinking about blessing and beginning the day with blessing, beginning the day with abundance, and locating your blessings in all of these different things in your own life, in aspects of your relationship with your children, your grandchildren. And also, I would say, focusing specifically on maybe those areas of your relationships in your family that might be in need right now of some abundance. We all have those places in our family dynamics that feel difficult, scarce, just a little bit tougher to navigate. And those are actually not the things to turn away from. Those are the moments, aspects of relationship to turn towards, and to think about what can I change? What can I flip here so that I'm actually working with what's there and flipping the lens a little bit. And so these are prompts we wanted to give you as we move into the Thanksgiving holiday, to really spend a little bit of time offering your own blessing to begin each morning. Jane, do you want to
No,
close?
I just want to say, like, I want to encourage everybody before the family walks in the door to get yourself a one line. I am so blessed that using those slides, I'm so blessed that I had COVID last week, but my body healed. And just doing that could just open up an experience. I'm so blessed that somebody's bringing a dish that, a recipe that, a recipe that was my mother's recipe, they're bringing to Thanksgiving. Whatever it is, just for yourselves, take away. You don't have to write a whole prayer book to do this, but the beauty of blessings is that they're short. Thank you for the bread. Thank you for the wine. All right. 100 times a day, write a short one and write it down for yourself and have it someplace close before Thanksgiving. So you can just practice what we've been talking about and kind of remind yourself of Hakarata Tov. I feel in my body when it feels right. I recognize obstacles. I walk around it. I have Jewish wisdom at my back. I have family stories at my back. And I know when I pause to think about it, how this feels. So create a one-liner for yourself. And I also really want to suggest that Terry Kay is the goddess of sharing what people send into the Jewish Grandparent Network. And if people started sending in blessings that they wrote, from grandparents, it would be a beautiful thing to share. So I want to encourage all of you to take that time to reflect, have it in hand, because writing, like putting your hand to heart, brings it slow and brings it real. And share them. Let's share them with each other.
And we want to say that we are so grateful to have been given the opportunity to come and discuss and learn with you this evening. Jane and I have to hop off now, actually, because we have to go teach another class, both of us. But really,
together, not together.
Not together, two separate classes, but so much gratitude for welcoming us. And we really want to offer you a blessing of abundance on this Thanksgiving holiday. And hopefully we will have the opportunity to learn with you again.
Yeah.
Stay for 1 second, just so that I can say thank you, because it was so sweet.
We enjoy doing this. We enjoy doing this.
Oh, you guys are the best. What a brilliant idea. If you do proceed and write little blessings of gratitude, please send them to me. I put my email in chat,
Great.
Terry with a Y at jewishgrandparentsnetwork.org. Oh, I hope
Happy
you feel
holidays.
good. I feel so good. Bye, Rebecca. Bye, Jane. We are going to stay on for just a minute after our presenters have left, because we want to give you an opportunity to click on the survey and tell us your reaction to this event tonight and what you would like to see more of. We are very, very eager to hear from you. And thank you again, Zoe, for helping us facilitate and helping with the tech especially. And to all of you, thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing your presence with us. So from all of us, good night.